Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and it's Women's History Month, and I'm here today to talk to you about L.M. Montgomery's Anne of Green Gables. So this came out in 2016, and it's a Canadian television movie. But in America, it came out on PBS. Now, in Australia and New Zealand, it got a theatrical release. Originally, back in 2013, this was supposed to be a 13 episode miniseries, but they changed their mind and decided to make it into 3 movies starting in 2016. And I never watched this on PBS, but like it had 32 million viewers and stuff. And it had an additional 230,000 viewers online. So it was a really big thing. It's rated G. And, when it comes to Anne of Green Gables, I believe I did watch the original with Meg Fellows in it, but I don't remember. But the one I do remember is Netflix and with an E. And I love that series. Even though people don't like it because they say it's very dark. When you watch this one, it is the complete opposite. It's very light and a bit more humorous and stuff, but it's very light and I guess you can say in a jolly kind of way because it is rated G for crying out loud. So, but I like both versions and stuff. I remember I watched the Anne with the E first, and then I watched this on Amazon Prime back in the day. And I remember thinking, oh wow, this is so weird. Like, it's a different cast and it's a different setting and it's a lot brighter and stuff like that. But I do like both of them. And Anne of Green Gables is a classic. And I mean a classic. And I remember hearing when the book came out in 1908, when L.M. Montgomery wrote it, I heard somewhere that there was only supposed to be just one book. Like, that's just it. You know what I'm saying? But then things happened. Like, supposedly her husband was mentally ill or something like that, and bills were piling up, so she decided to write more books, even though she did not want to. And when you watch the end of this movie, you can tell it was a one and done type thing. But I'm glad she continued to write. In fact, she wrote a total of like 9 books. The last published in 2009 when she died in 1940. It's because, it was written, but it was never published and stuff. All those years later, and she wrote tons of short stories about Anne. Now, Anne is a fictional character, and from what I've researched, she's not based on nobody, no past life experience, nothing like that. So this is truly a work of art. And you can always appreciate more when it's a fictional character and it's not like, based on nobody's real life. Now, in this version, you have, I'm trying to think of her name. Okay, Ella Ballantine. She plays Anne Shirley, and she's only 5'1". Now, they had to dye her hair red in this, because Anne has red hair. Now, in real life, she has more of a brown kind of auburn kind of look, but it's mostly brown. They added freckles to her face, which is extremely distracting and stuff. Every time they do a close-up on her face, I can't help but to look at her freckles and everything. Now, she plays Anne very much differently than the one from Anne with an E. Like I said before, Anne with the E is very dark. And even though, like, the other Anne with the E is my favorite, I like this one a lot. She has a joyfulness to her, a real youthful kiddiness to her, And, like, you really believe that she's, like, a kid and stuff. And Martin Sheen, conspiracy theorist. Yes, that's right. He's a conspiracy theorist. He plays Matthew. I said Culprit. I forgot what's their last name. Anyway. And then his sister is Sarah Botsford. I can't talk. Sarah Botsford, and she plays Marilla. And it's always interesting when it comes to Marilla and Matthew. It feels like, they're husband and wife because they're so old and they live together, but they're really brother and sister. But they act like husband and wife. And you gotta remember back in those days, the olden days, siblings still lived at home either with their parents or inherited their parents' house and stuff like that. And what's really, 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 and I mean really interesting is like Diane Barry, the actress who plays her, is Julia Lalonde. What's crazy about that is that, okay, both this version and the Anne with the E version are their Dianes are played by actresses who were on Odd Squad. That's just insane. And so, like, it was written by Susan Coney and it was directed by John Kent Harrison. And Kate McDonald Butler is the granddaughter of L.M. Montgomery, and she was the executive producer. Now, Ella, she won 2 awards for playing this role, and it was shown at the Canadian Museum of History. And nowadays, instead of Amazon Prime, you can pretty much watch this on one of those free apps. I watched it on Tubi. It might also be on Freevee, I believe, but I watched it on Tubi. And all 3 versions are there. Well, all 3 movies, I should say. And with the E is still on Netflix, which I own on DVD, which is going to be weird because like this month I'm going to be talking about this version. Then I'm going to be talking about the Netflix version. So it's going to feel like I'm kind of repeating myself. But the interesting thing about the Netflix ones is because it's a TV series, they was able to go more deeper into the lore and everything. But then by season 2 and 3, they kind of went away from the lore and just started creating their own stuff, which irritated a lot of fans, but it didn't irritate me because I've never read the books and I don't remember the Meg Follow series. But the Meg Follow series is beloved by so many fans, and that a lot of them just they see her as Anne and nobody else. Now, what's crazy about Anne with an E is that it came out 1 year after this movie. So think, if this would have had 13 episodes and say they would have got renewed, then like it would have been, competing with the other show. And so with this one, because I don't remember the Meg Fellows one and because I never read the book, and because Anne with the E is so different, I'm going to assume this is pretty much sticking to that of the lore of the novel and everything. And, it's weird. It's kind of like when you watch Anne with the E, it's kind of like, did they leave some things out? Did they add some things, So I really don't have a true basis of what's the real version and stuff. But like I said before, the television show goes in more depth into like a lot of the situations and stuff. And so this follows that of Anne Shirley. Anne Shirley is a little redheaded girl from Nova Scotia with freckles. She's very inquisitive, very smart, and loves to chit chat. All that girl does, she will just talk your head off to the point of annoyance. And I'll say that when she talks, it's an annoying, adorable kind of way, Like she has a huge imagination and a big heart. And, as much as I love the Netflix series, like I said before, it was so nice to see a nice, joyful, playful version of this great novel and stuff. And when it comes to that Matthew and that Marilla, Matthew is more humorous in this. He's kind of like that playful uncle type person, very caring and everything. Marilla's that very kind of mean, authoritative type figure. She not so much stuck up, but she's just like high and mighty type thing, and very stern. And so like they need someone to help around with the chores. So they want to get like a young boy from the orphanage. But of course, it's not a young boy. When Matthew goes to pick the boy up, it's a little teeny tiny girl with red hair and pigtails named Anne Shirley. And on the way back, she's just chatting his head off. Oh, correction, it's 3.2 million, not 32 million. So, anyways, so there's some resentment because Marilla does not want a girl, period. She just wants that of a boy to help out with chores. Now, in this, Marilla just feels sympathetic and decides to let Anne stay there on a trial basis, only for it's only like temporary and stuff, because she felt bad. Because the thing about Anne is she wears her heart on her sleeve, her emotions and everything like that. So she got upset and she started crying and everything, which kind of changed the heart of Marilla just for a bit. And so while there, it's a bit of an uphill battle because it's like, because she wears her heart on her sleeve, she's very emotional and she will defend herself. Marilla's best friend insulted like Anne's look. Didn't even say hey to the girl, just like insulted the girl, talking about, oh, you're skinny and your hair color and blah, blah, blah. So I think Anne called her fat or something like that. And it pissed that woman off. And it's to the point where Anne just ran to her room crying because Marilla told her to go there. And she did not want to apologize, but Marilla wanted her to. But it was Matthew who convinced her to like apologize. It was the right thing to do and this and that. We don't get to hear the apology, we just get to see it. And it's kind of funny because Anne has her hands up in the air telling a big elaborate story. And so it's pretty humorous and stuff. And when it comes to Anne, like I said before, her imagination runs wild. She wants to be called Cordelia and everything. She loves wearing hats and loves putting flowers in her hats. And she just has this overactive big imagination that kind of like gets a bit too wild and everything. And it's to the point where Marilla is always like, you gotta stop using big words because you're confusing people and they're gonna think you're weird and all this other crap. But Anne is literally having the time of her life. See, she comes from an orphanage and she's been put in one home after another. And each home she was put in is a terrible home. And we get to see flashbacks and stuff. And it's always in black and white. The orphanage, the lady who run it was really mean. She was going to put Anne in the workhouse and this and that. So there is elements of darkness in this as well. Just not as dark as the Netflix one, because they really upped their ante on Anne being tortured at the orphanage and stuff. Well, here it's just like a little montage of glimpses in here and this and there. But in Green Gables, Anne is just having the time of her life. She's having to work on a farm, which is something she's not used to. Learning how to milk a cow, which, man, that cow's milk sack was huge. And having to get the eggs from the chickens, which there is goo on there, which I never realized. But yeah, it makes sense because it's coming out the chickens, you know what. And she doesn't want to touch it because it's gross. And it's just so adorable how the actress plays that. And she gets to meet like other kids because she never had friends. So Marilla introduces her to Diane Barry. And those two become bosom buddies. Which is something people have interpreted as those two being secret lesbians and stuff. It's never been confirmed and the writer has passed away, so nobody will never know. And so her and Diane just hit off very well. She has a big imagination, talking about fairies and this and that. They love playing Tea Party and everything. And so she gets invited to some kind of like festival they're having. And Anne's never had ice cream before, and she's about to have it the first time. But there's a problem. See, Marilla, when she was sick, and she wanted Anne to go to church, she showed Anne her little necklace thing, which you open up and it's a picture of her mom. And they don't go too much into like, talking about Marilla's mom, but they do in the Netflix series. Well, the brooch went missing and she blamed Anne. Anne said she didn't do it, and then she told her, "You ain't going to that festival and you're going to your room." Well, later on, Marilla found the thing on the floor. It's way more dramatic in the Netflix series. Like the Netflix series will literally tug at your heartstrings and stuff in that first season, boy, I'm telling you. But they had to keep everything light and humorous for this version. So she gets to go, she eats ice cream, and some of her peers are very rude to her. And so, like, when she goes to school for the first time, because she's so excited, which, who's excited to go to school? I know I never was, man. Like, she's there, and of course, there's Gilbert, the famous Gilbert scene where he likes tugging on girls' hair. And as bratty as he is, he tugs on Anne's hair, and she is not having it. And she bops him in the head with the dry erase board thing. Not dry erase board, the chalk board thing. That I remember those things, man. Like they even gave us some when I was in school in the 80s and stuff. They would have us write on it and erase it. It was just so much fun. But yeah, she bopped the crap out of him and broke that thing. So she gets in trouble at school and everything to the point where she no longer wants to go. That sounds very familiar. That sounds like Little Women with Amy and everything. Remember, Amy got in trouble with the pickle stuff and she got spanked and never wanted to go to school again and stuff. Interesting. So because of this, she doesn't. Gilbert's not really in this like movie that much. He's only in there for a little bit, and when she does finally go back to school, because the thing about her not going to school is that she says she doesn't want to go, and then so we don't see her go, but then we see her go again because she's later on in like a play, a recital type thing where she has to sing, and Gilbert's now being nice to her and everything, and trying to apologize profusely because he feels terrible about what he did. And like of course there's that famous scene where her and Diane are having like playing like tea and eating like pretending like have a tea party and everything. And it's so adorable to see them have like play the tea party thing because they're acting normal at first, but then like they start talking very snooty and very professional, very ladylike, and but then they like, break character and use their regular voices. And it's like just funny to see that. Like I really enjoy that scene. And of course, Diane gets drunk. And it's so funny to watch Julia get drunk. Because Anne thinks it's like some type of like juice, but it's not. But it pisses off Diane's mother to the point where they're no longer allowed to be friends. But of course, all that changes when Diana's sister is sick, which Anne races over to give her Ipecac and stuff. Which causes the mother to realize, you know what, I was just being too harsh. Like the thing about Anne is like, she's kind of like Hetty Feather. Bad stuff is always happening to her. And that's interesting because Hetty Feather has red hair as well, and she's in the orphanage and bad. Man, all this stuff is too similar. It's like one person read one book and they're like, all right, let me base this off this. And so, like, as much as she tries to have fun and do good things, there's always something bad happening, and people are always getting mad at her, which makes her wonder, well, what's wrong with me? I'm just trying to live my life, and all these people getting pissed. But that lady realized, you know what, an accident's happened, and it ain't like you try to get my daughter drunk, and if it wasn't for you, my other daughter would be dead. So they're allowed to be bosom buddies again. And so as they're hanging out one day, they're out on the ice because there's snow and all this other stuff. They want to go toboggan racing, which causes Matthew to get worried because he's all like, there's no safe place around here. And so, of course, Anne goes out into the ice because she's dared to, and she falls in. Which is interesting because Amy fell into the ice water in Little Women. Interesting. And so, like, she's rescued by Matthew. And I like this scene because at this point in time, Matthew had some heart problems, right? There's something wrong with him, and he shouldn't be out there on the ice trying to rescue somebody in the cold water, but he does it anyway. And it causes the bully, the girl who dared her, to be a bit nicer to her and stuff. But, sadly, something sad and bad always has to happen. Like, remember when I said Marilla didn't want her and tried to get rid of her? Well, the orphanage people, or children's services, or whatever you call it, they found her a home. So Matthew takes her to the train station. Only for Marilla's best friend to come to her and be all like, look, man, you're going to make a terrible mistake if you don't go back and get that girl. So Marilla races there with the lady's husband, and it's a very touching scene when she tells Anne, like, you're part of our family. I want you to stay, and, you're part of Green Gables. You are literally Anne of Green Gables. Like, everybody knows who Anne is and stuff. And everybody has an interesting story when it comes to that of Anne. So it ends on a very touching, beautiful note, which makes you think, yeah, this is one and done. Until, of course, the author had to write more to pay bills and stuff. And thank God she did, because there are so many other cool stories that go along with it. To the point where Anne literally started off as a girl in the books, became a teenager, an adult, a married woman, and had kids. And, that's great. That's like full circle right there, man. Now, one of the things that Anne wants the most is a dress with, I believe, not ruffles in it or something like that. I don't know what it is. And so Matthew, knowing they ain't got much money and everything, he has the neighbor lady make her a very beautiful dress to wear, because Anne mostly just wears like these old hand-me-down looking dresses that are very dingy. Colors back then were brown and grays to let you know that you're poor, and the rich people wore very colorful dresses and stuff. Diane's family is very high class and stuff. And so, yeah, very much different than the Netflix one, but still good in its own right, even though it's rated G. When I think of things rated G, I'm thinking of Disney movies and stuff. But it's a classic. It's really fun, and yeah. Happy Women's History Month, everybody. All right, well, I'll talk to you later. Bye.